What is the most unexpected time you've ever had sex? Story 1. This sounds terrible, and it was. But about 30 minutes before his dad's funeral, I was not the initiator. I had sex with my wife for the first time a few hours after I got back from burying my dad. I had a week-long sojourn bringing my mom back from my parents' vacation, when I rushed across the country to be there after his stroke. Got home, wanted to just talk to someone nice. Met my now wife somehow, off Tinder. Told her I'd be gone that weekend. Awkwardly then had to explain why I was leaving again. Funeral. And woof, I was ready to take out some feelings when I got back. 5 or 6 times worth of feelings. I had a lot of them. Anyway, she married me, and is amazing. So it all worked out. Kind of blows my mind that my dad missed her by this much. But I likely never would have met her if he hadn't died and all that went down. Life is crazy. Sorry for your loss. Your dad was the best wingman from beyond. You could have asked for given how things turned out. My best friend got murdered when our friend group was in our early 20s. After the funeral, we all went home to nap, and then go hang out that night. As soon as we left the cemetery, my girlfriend at the time started to below me. Got home and ducked like animals. It was so weird to do that after putting our friend in the ground. This isn't factual at all. But a group of college friends of mine and I stayed at someone's parents' house. The night before the funeral of our friend. There was a big pool with a hedge. And we all decided to go skinny dipping. Something about death makes you want to celebrate life. I know our friend who passed would have loved to see it. Story 2. Went to go pick up my little sister from her friend's house. Was there often. And just walking in was normal. But none of the kids were around. Went and knocked on the kid's mom's door. And heard her say, "Open the door, I can't hear you." Can tell she's in the shower. So, go stand by that door and ask where the kiddos are. She says, "Open the door, I can't hear you." Next thing I know, I'm in the shower with sister's friend's mom. I was 18. She was early 40s, and stacked. Many years later. And still the wildest change to how I thought my day was going to go. Every time my little sister's friend was being a little shit, I just wanted to tell him I ducked his mom to shut him up. Lol. Story 3. In the back seat of the car my mom was driving, from my prom. My girlfriend was corny after a few shots of tequila. So, we did it secretly. At least we thought so. The next day, my mom told me that it wasn't very secret. Yes, very embarrassing. How, ew. How dumb is your mom that you even thought it remotely possible to get away with this? You damn near have to be deaf and blind or at least exceptionally inebriated to not notice. It was nothing wild. Not even finished. She was sitting on top of me. It was at night. And we were young and drunk. It was really stupid and embarrassing. I will never forget the feeling I had the very next day. Let me tell you something to help you feel better. Someone here once shared a story of how he would jerk off like crazy in his bedroom throughout his adolescence. When he was in his early 20s and out to dinner with the family, his mom mentioned replacing the bed in his old bedroom. His sister cracked a joke about how he could move home and masturbate in private. The whole family started laughing. Turned out every single time he burked it, his bed would squeak and the headboard would hit the wall, and the whole house could hear it. Every ducking time. Story 4. When living in Japan, Navy service, I had a friend who lost water at her apartment. She needed a place to shower and I let her come over and use mine. Didn't think or expect anything to happen. But this also happened to be one of the rare times I had none of my other 3 roommates home at the time. Pretty sure I was playing video games when she called out to me to come over to help her with something. I figured it would be how our shower worked, since this was a panel in Japanese to get hot water. Nope, she was baked, ready, and totally forward about what she wanted. Keep the fun going from shower to bedroom. Then she had to run back to her apartment early the next day, because she did not bring her uniform to my place. I bet her shower wasn't even broken. 19 years later. And the thought never crossed my mind. And that was not our last time. not anything serious. But I became her booty call. If she went back to her apartment without showering in the morning, then there's your clue. Story 5. I was at home. This girl from my high school, we weren't exactly friends by any means. She knew me just enough to know where I live. A lot of that school lived in my neighborhood. She showed up at my house and struck up a conversation. We went to the garage. Not to have sex. I just don't like speaking to people in front of family. During our conversation, she randomly pulled a condom out of her pocket and said, "Look what I got." I don't know how the conversation went from that moment to an actual factual act. But before I knew it, I was sitting in a lawn chair getting head. That shifted to her being bent over my grandma's classic car, getting plowed by me. What sort of car? I am curious. Early 60s Mercury Comet. Story 6. When I was 18, I was at my buddy's house, and his girlfriend had a friend over too. We didn't really talk much that evening, just a few words here and there. About midnight, I decided to leave, and so did her friend. I was about to get into my car, and she waved me over. I get to her car, and she was like, "I don't normally do this, but I really want to get ducked tonight. You want to come back to my house? You can do whatever you want to me, and I'll swallow." I was blown away. No woman had ever talked to me like that before. I said, "Hell yeah." We had some pretty awesome facts. We had a short few weeks long fling. She was completely insane. Oh yes, the crazy hot matrix strikes again. Story 7. I met this woman through online dating site, and we had a few decent friendly dates. I asked her to go to a professional event with me. Black tie, so we both dressed up. So we go back to her place, and we're on the couch chatting. And I went for the first kiss. Got frisky, and I was kissing down her neck, and decided to unzip her dress and head south. As soon as I started nibbling on her creates, she got up and said, "It's time to go," and walked towards the door. I was a bit dejected, because it seemed like she was shutting it down. She stood there holding up her dress, and covering her creates with one arm, and it was a stunning image that still burned in my memory. I gave her a kiss, and turned to open the door. Then she asked, "What are you doing? You're not coming up." I was such a doofus for not realizing that she meant that it was time to take this upstairs. Needless to say, it was a fun night after that. Story 8. Gondola lift going up a mountain in Switzerland. My wife and were backpacking for 21 days around Europe, and unexpectedly found ourselves alone on the gondola. We just looked at each other, smiled, and went for it. Fantastic experience. Vaguely reminds me. I think it was Bryan Cranston on a talk show, and telling a story about how you could ride on a train in Europe inside your car, like on a flatbed. And someone told him suggestively, some of the tunnels were really long, if you catch my drift. So apparently he and the wife talked it over, and were going to try to get it on during the ride. Though a sleeper car would have been a sure thing. Well, the tunnel they tried it on only lasted a few seconds. So, they got caught getting undressed. That's awesome. Actually, my second best factual experience was a sleeper train car on that same trip. It's a long story, so I won't bore you with all the details. But we had to sneak on an overnight train out of Paris, and found an empty sleeper car. We got in, and I closed the door, and had to hold it closed for about an hour, as people knocked on the door and tried to open it. We had reserved a smaller and private sleeper car, but there was a mix-up. I wasn't going to share a sleeper car with strangers overnight. I figured out how to use my luggage lock to fully secure the door, and turned around to find my wife fully baked in the dark, with the moonlight bouncing off her body. We ducked so hard and passionately as the train made its way to Munich, Germany. That was such a great trip. Story 9. In the car with a co-worker who was driving me home, I admitted to another co-worker that I had an extreme crush on this girl. What I didn't know was that she immediately told her about my crush. So, when she offered to drive me home, I always walked. It was only a couple of miles. I thought she was just being nice and taking me home. Well, oh no, thanks. I can't drink coffee late at night. It keeps me up. Story 10. When my wife and I were dating, she drove a friend out of town to see her husband, who was just completing boot camp, and I tagged along for the weekend. We spent that first night in the same room, with us in one bed and the friend in the other. I wasn't expecting anything, seeing as how we had someone this close to us. But after we thought the friend fell asleep, my wife started kissing and grouping me. She said she wanted it, but I resisted. After a couple more minutes, she finally just flat out said, "Duck me." Now, it was the most unexpected, slowest, quietest, and hottest facts ever. The next day, the friend made a comment that she couldn't sleep because we were moving around too much. She knew